Hello, and welcome to this tutorial on Postman testing. We know that APIs have become a critical part of software development. They allow different software applications to communicate with each other and exchange data, right? And if we think about this, building APIs is the only half the story. Testing and validating the API is equally important to ensure that they are reliable and meet their intended purpose. And that's where Postman come in. So Postman allows you to automate the API test, making the testing process even more efficient. In this video, I'll show you how to use Postman to test and automate your APIs. So this is a continuation to my previous video tutorials about Postman, where we imported clean architecture API and it had a couple of requests, a dummy request, which we created from the Swagger specs. Now, if you can look at this specific request, you can see I'm getting the response back. So let me just hit it one more time to make sure I'm getting the data back. Yeah, it says 200. And do you do you prefer to validate this data every time, like by looking at it or by just navigating to appropriate object? That's not the right way. I mean, technically you can do that, but still it is not an efficient way. So better way to do that is writing a test cases on the response that you got. So basically, you can write test cases about your data, your response that you got, the content that you got on headers, right? So every time you get something back from the server in terms of API response, you will have some sort of headers here that says what is this content type. If you are following a pagination, then you may supply a link to the previous and the next page depending on the design that you choose. And not only that, you can do a testing around what kind of environment you have selected and whether certain variable exists or not, right? So that all is possible through a window that you get on something on a request, right? And when you click here, this is where you will write your test cases. Generally, it is just a plain JavaScript. Uh, I mean, you can write this test cases using the JavaScript, and it is straightforward. Everything starts with PM, and PM stands for Postman, and then you have a syntax or basically a framework created by Postman team that you can leverage to write your unit test cases about this response. So the very first, I mean, I have coded this couple of lines here in terms of test cases before this video tutorial started, so you don't have to see me typing. So the first one says pm.test, right? So this is where you define your method. That's just like, I mean, this is where you use the test method. And the very first parameter says select, very first parameter you will specify that represents the text for the test case. And the second one is nothing but the function, right? Anonymous function where you will use the libraries provided by Postman team to write the test cases. So you will do PM, right? Again, everything starts with PM dot expect. And it is very descriptive language, so you should be able to catch up easily. PM dot expect. So what do you expect here? That your environment name equal to something, right? So as you can see, pm.environment.name. This is a way you can access your environment variables. And if you look at this environment that I have selected, it should be demo environment. Now, where would you use this? I mean, if you have multiple environments against which you need to check the API, in that case, you can use this. Now, the second test case is about whether this API call was successful or not. So this is where you will again do the same thing, test, specify the test name or the message that you want to display in case, I mean, irrespective of what test case, I mean, whether test case fails or pass, this is what you should see, right? Um, and if it fails, it will still label that API call was successful with red button before that that says that I mean, it did not pass. So the way to verify whether my API call was successful or not is through pm.response to have a status of 200. Now, this is, as you can see, this is really descriptive way of writing test cases. The next test case is, okay, so I'm into the environment. I have a successful request. Now, what does my content type look like? So you can write pm.response.file, and then you can access these headers. As I mentioned, you will see some headers, right? And if, I mean, basically what my content, I mean, whether that content type is present or not, my bad. Yeah. So this is the way to access headers. And if it exists, this test will pass. If not, it will fail. Similarly, the next one, let's skip this one for now. The next one is if that content type header exists, right? So you can actually nest these things in a way that it looks from top to bottom, where and my content type header is application or JSON, right? So first I verified that this exists, that key exists, right? And then what that key looks like. So that is where I wrote another test case pm.response.headers.get content type, then the contains, and then application or JSON. Now, coming back to the previous one, this is a test case about my data. So all other test cases were around the environment, then headers, about the request. This is where actually you can specify your unit test about your data that is being written from server. So first you will capture the JSON object, which is nothing but this body, right? So response JSON is pm.response.json. So PM has a object called response, and you can use this method to convert that object into the JSON. So once you do that, response JSON looks like this. So now you can easily you can easily write the test cases by looking at the different properties that exist on response JSON. So pm.expect response JSON.data to be an array. So this is another way of specifying that, okay, if I'm getting a body back, right? If I'm getting that specific response from server, is it supposed to be an array or not? So first, I know that my server is going to return me an object that contains another object called data, but that data is nothing but the array. So that's what I'm verifying here. And also, you can drill down into the nested array and figure out what that individual properties are coming back from server. So response JSON data of 0. So basically, I'm just keying on the first object in the array, and then dot to equal, this is like deep equal to 1, meaning the ID on the very first object is 1 or not. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So once I run this, right? And oh, before I run that, there is a last test case that I wrote. These are all examples. You can go to the this website here. So you see this test scripts. That's where you will navigate, and you'll find lots and lots of examples of writing these test cases. These are just very basic uh, usage of how you can, very basic usage of this test cases that I came up with from this website. So you'll find really deep documentation about how you can write basic to advanced test cases in here to make sure your API is like robust and it is reliable. All right. So last test case is about uh, let's say you want to perform you want to measure the performance of your API, how fast they are, like how much time it takes. So this is where I wrote pm.expect and the response time to be below 100. That means this is again milliseconds. So every time you send a request, all of this test will be evaluated, test cases will be evaluated, and they will be printed here in terms of uh, whether they got pass or they got failed. So as you can see, uh, selected environment is passing because I have demo environment, and then rest all are passing except this one. I intentionally kept it at 100 because I know my server sometimes responds a little bit faster compared to other times. So that's why I kept it to show you that it may work, it may not work. So this is how you will evaluate your uh, test cases. So if you click on send, and now it just came back really fast. So this is where I have all the test cases passes. All right, so that's it for the simple test cases in Postman. If you find this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for the time.